The Reconquista, spanning from 711 to 1492, a series of campaigns by Christian states to recapture territory taken by Muslims in the Iberian Peninsula. Beginning with the Islamic conquest of the Visigothic kingdom, the roots of the Reconquista are deep, and it's characterized by nearly 8 centuries of warfare. This long process culminated in 1492 with the conquest of Granada, the final Muslim state on the peninsula, by King Ferdinand of Aragon and Queen Isabella of Castile. This victory not only unified Spain under a single Christian monarchy, but also set the stage for significant religious and cultural changes, including the expulsion of Jews and Muslims and the establishment of the Spanish Inquisition. Hello and welcome to the channel. If you are new here, it's good to meet you, and if you're coming back, great to have you with me for another video. We are well and truly past 20,000 subscribers. Thank you very much. I wonder what our next goal will be. I'm sure we can get there in time. Now, as always, if you want to support the channel, you're already doing it. Enjoying the content is the best way to do so, but those who want to go above and beyond may refer to the video description. That being said, let us get relaxed, take a deep breath, and we may begin our history of the Reconquista. Let's go back to the beginning, the very beginning. In the year 711, North African Berber soldiers, accompanied by a coalition of Arabs under Tariq ibn Ziyad's command, crossed the Strait of Gibraltar, engaging a Visigothic force led by King Roderick at the Battle of Guadalete. Now remember that at this time Muhammad's conquests were raging, and, well, the Islamic forces were expanding at a rate never before seen. The speed in which the empire came about was truly astonishing. And that Strait of Gibraltar I mentioned, that is the gap of water that celebrates Spain and Africa. Now, back to the Battle of Guadalete. Well, this battle occurred amidst severe internal conflict within the Visigothic kingdom of Hispania. In fact, many of Roderick's troops simply deserted when push came to shove. Of course, this led to his defeat, and a rather sad end, as he drowned while attempting to cross the Guadalquivir River. Well, following Roderick's defeat, the Umayyad governor of Ifriqiya, Musa ibn Nusayr, joined Tariq in a campaign against various towns and strongholds in Hispania. Several towns, including Merida, Cordova, Zaragoza, and possibly Toledo, were captured, while others simply agreed to treaties in exchange for maintaining their autonomy, or at least a fraction of it. After establishing a local emirate, Caliph al-Walid I of the Umayyad Caliphate removed many of the successful Muslim commanders. Tariq ibn Ziyad was recalled to Damascus and replaced with one Musa ibn Nasir. Musa's son, Abd al-Aziz ibn Musa, reportedly married Roderick's widow, Egilona, and established his regional government in the city of Seville. However, Abd al-Aziz was suspected of secretly harboring a desire to convert to Christianity, and even worse than that, or perhaps on the same level depending on which Islamic scholar you ask, planning a successionist rebellion, prompting Caliph al-Walid I to order his assassination. Ethnic tensions between Berbers and Arabs emerged as a serious weakness among the Muslim conquerors, jeopardizing Umayyad unity. Now, I won't go into the complicated categorization of different groups of Berbers and all the rest, but think of the Berbers as Mediterranean Africans. Well, despite their successes, the Umayyad forces faced resistance, and a major defeat in Europe at the Battle of Toulouse halted their expedition, albeit temporarily. A punitive expedition led by Abdul Rahman al-Ghafiqi defeated Odo of Aquitaine at the Battle of the River Garonne in 732. Odo then sought aid from his rival, Charles Martel, who led Frankish and Aquitanian armies against the Umayyad forces at the Battle of Poitiers in 732. Martel's victory was a turning point, as Moorish rule in what is now France became to decline, although it would endure in parts of the Iberian Peninsula for several centuries thereafter. Now, in response to a significant increase in taxes on Christians by the new emir Anbasa ibn Suhaim al-Kalbi, several rebellions erupted in Al-Andalus. Despite efforts by successive weak emirs, these uprisings could not be suppressed, and around 722, a Muslim military expedition was dispatched into the north to quell a rebellion led by Pelagius of Asturias, a pivotal event traditionally regarded as the beginning of the Reconquista. Well, despite their small size, these two northern realms, Navarre and Asturias, demonstrated a rather remarkable resistance, maintaining their independence. The Umayyad rulers based in Cordoba, recognizing their inability to extend power over the Pyrenees, opted to consolidate their authority within the Iberian Peninsula. While Arab Berber forces periodically raided deep into Asturias, this region, situated on the periphery of the Islamic world, posed challenges, but at the same time held very little strategic interest. Often, the game was not quite worth the candle. Alfonso I of Asturias focused not only on raiding Arab Berber strongholds in the Meseta, but also on expanding his domains at the expense of neighboring Galicians and Basques. However, Asturian control over the kingdom remained quite tenuous in the early years, necessitating continual efforts to strengthen it through alliances and conflicts with other northern Iberian peoples. Following the death of Pelayo in 737, his son Fabiola of Asturias ascended to the throne, but he reportedly met a rather tragic and brutal end, in the way that he was mauled to death by a bear during what is known as a courage trial, basically like a challenge, go out into the woods. Well, it seems that this one was a little bit too much of a challenge. Well, despite this setback, Pelayo's dynasty endured, gradually expanding the kingdom's boundaries until roughly 775, encompassing all of northwest Hispania. Further territorial expansion occurred under Alfonso II of Asturias, who reigned from 791 to 842. During his reign, an expedition pillaged Lisbon in 798, possibly in collaboration with the Carolingians. The Asturian kingdom's legitimacy was cemented with the recognition of Alfonso II as King of Asturias, not only by Charlemagne, but also the official endorsement came from the Pope. Additionally, during his rule, the discovery of the remains of St. James the Great in Galicia at Santiago de Compostela enhanced the kingdom's prestige. This discovery spurred pilgrimages from across Europe, fostering communication between Asturias and the Carolingian lands in the centuries that followed. 10 years later, Odo of Aquitaine sought to secure his southern borders against Charles Martel's incursions by marrying his daughter to Uthman ibn Naisa, a rebel Berber, and the lord of Cerdanya. However, a punitive expedition led by Abdul Rahman al-Ghafiqi, the emir of Al-Andalus, resulted in Uthman's defeat and death. In 759, Pepin the Short expelled the Muslims from Narbonne and waged a ruthless 8-year war to conquer Aquitaine. Following in his father's footsteps, Charlemagne solidified Carolingian control of Aquitaine by appointing counts of Frankish or Burgundian origin, and establishing the Church as his ally. Thus, Toulouse became a pivotal base for Charlemagne's expeditions against Al-Andalus. Charlemagne's efforts to secure the southern border of the Carolingian Empire culminated in the creation of the Spanish March in 781. This regional sub-kingdom included part of contemporary Catalonia and aimed to contain Aquitanians while guarding against Muslim incursions. In the same year, Charlemagne's young son Louis was crowned King of Aquitaine under the supervision of William of Gellon, tasked with overseeing the nascent Spanish March. Meanwhile, the southern fringes of Al-Andalus witnessed internal strife between Abd al-Rahman I and Yusuf ibn Abd al-Rahman, an autonomous governor or king perhaps of the region. Abd al-Rahman I eventually expelled Yusuf from Cordoba, but faced external opposition from the Abbasids of Baghdad. In 778, Abd al-Rahman advanced towards the Ebro Valley, prompting regional lords to seek assistance from the Christian Franks. At the Diet of Paderborn in 777, Charlemagne received envoys from Zaragoza, Girona, Barcelona, and Huesca, who offered their allegiance. All they wanted in return was Frankish military aid against Abd al-Rahman and his unwanted advances. Charlemagne's expedition into the Iberian Peninsula in 778 ended in a setback at the Battle of Roncesvalles Pass, where his rear guard was ambushed and destroyed by Basque forces. This battle, in particular, is also the subject of a large portion of the poetic work The Song of Roland. Not sure if you've read that one, but you should probably do it. Well, despite this ambush by the Basque forces, Charlemagne continued to exert influence in the region. Upon the death of Abd al-Rahman in 788, Hisham I took the throne and proclaimed a jihad in 792, advancing against the kingdoms of Asturias and the Carolingian Septimania. Although they initially defeated William of Guelon, the Count of Toulouse, William led a successful expedition the following year across the eastern Pyrenees. In 797, Barcelona became the focal point of conflict, as its governor, Zayd, rebelled against the Umayyad emir of Cordoba. Although the emir's army recaptured the city in 799, Louis, leading a Frankish army, crossed the Pyrenees and besieged Barcelona for 7 months, until it finally capitulated in early 801. Charlemagne strategically established vassal regions across key Pyrenees passes, Pamplona, Aragon, and Catalonia. These regions, forming the Marca Hispanica by the late 8th century, served as buffers against Muslim incursions and were under direct Frankish control. Pamplona's first king, Inigo Arista, rebelled against Frankish rule and established the Kingdom of Pamplona in 824. Aragon, founded by Aznar Galindez in 809, protected the old Roman road and eventually merged together with Navarre by the end of the 10th century. Now onto Barcelona, which emerged as a fairly significant power under the rule of Count Wilfred in the late 9th century. It controlled the policies of other counties, in a union, leading to its independence under Count Borel II in 948. Although smaller than Asturias, these states, except for Navarre, lacked the capacity for aggressive attacks against the Muslims. They simply did not have the men nor the resources to do so. Too much of a risk. However, what they did have was mountainous terrain, and this mountainous terrain provided them relative safety from conquest, allowing the borders to remain stable for centuries. The Kingdom of Asturias, situated in the rugged Cantabrian mountains of northern Iberia, was the first Christian power to emerge in the wake of the Muslim conquest. Founded around 718 by Pelagius, a Visigothic nobleman, it provided a pretty safe sanctuary for those who were fleeing the rapid Muslim advance. This included, of course, the remnants of the Visigothic aristocracy, and the indigenous groups like the Astures, Cantabri, Basques, and Galicians, who had not assimilated into Hispano-Gothic society. Pelagius's uprising, supported by these diverse groups, led to the establishment of the Asturian monarchy. Initially, the kingdom's authority was limited to the mountainous region, with Cangas de Onis serving as its early capital. However, successive rulers, particularly Alfonso III, sought to expand southward, emphasizing the kingdom's connection to the Visigothic legacy. Although some historians have suggested continuity between the Asturian kingdom and the Visigothic realm in Toledo, modern scholarship generally emphasizes the distinct and autonomous nature of the Astur-Leonese dynasty. Pelagius's kingdom initially relied on guerrilla warfare tactics, hit and run, harrying the enemy wherever they could, gradually consolidating power through matrimonial alliances and military campaigns. Now, for example, Alfonso I expanded westward into Galicia and conducted many raids over many years into Muslim territories. And of course, he didn't just take all this plunder and waste it. He used it to further supply and strengthen his military forces, investing in the future, it seems. Well, all of these raids not only bolstered Asturian military capabilities, but they also served as a means of asserting Christian presence in the formerly Visigothic territories. Over time, Asturias became a pivotal player in the Christian efforts to retake the Iberian Peninsula from Muslim rule, laying the groundwork for the Reconquista that would unfold over the centuries to come. Under King Alfonso's reign, which by the way lasted from around 791 to 842, which is quite an impressive reign, the Kingdom of Asturias saw significant developments. The kingdom's authority was firmly established, and the capital was transferred from its mountainous stronghold to Oviedo, reflecting this changing dynamic of power. During this time, Alfonso II initiated diplomatic contacts with neighboring kingdoms, such as the Carolingians and Pamplona, securing official recognition for his kingdom and crown from both the Pope and Charlemagne, two people that you really wanted to have on your side. A pivotal event during Alfonso II's reign was the purported discovery of the aforementioned bones of St. James the Great, discovered in Iria Flavia, which is kind of around present-day Padron, around 813 or maybe a little later. Now, the cult of St. James became closely associated with Compostela, which is from the Latin Campus Stellae, meaning the star field, possibly in the early 10th century. The discovery of these bones of St. James led to the establishment of Santiago de Compostela as a major pilgrimage site, laying the foundation for the later Way of St. James, which attracted pilgrims from across Europe. Despite ongoing battles between the Umayyads and the Asturians, neither side managed to assert complete control over the northern territories. However, under the reign of King Ramiro, the border slowly began to shift southward. Asturian holdings in regions such as Castile, Galicia, and Leon were fortified, and efforts to repopulate the countryside were intensified. In 924, the Kingdom of Asturias evolved, and from then on it was the Kingdom of Leon, with Leon becoming the seat of the royal court. Under Alfonso III of Asturias, significant developments took place that shaped the course of history in the Iberian Peninsula. Alfonso strategically repopulated and established Leon as the capital, initiating a series of campaigns to extend his control over territories north of the Douro River. He reorganized his realm into major duchies, such as Galicia and Portugal, and major counties, rather. I always read that word wrong. Well, these counties including Saldania and Castile. He also began extensive fortification of the border regions and constructed numerous castles, either completely new ones or substantial repairs on the old ones. Upon his death in 910, This kingdom had emerged as the dominant regional power. The Kingdom of Leon, a new formidable adversary. Now Alfonso's successor, Ordoño II, continued his efforts to expand Leon's influence. He organized attacks against Muslim strongholds like Toledo and Seville, aiming to push further south. However, the Caliphate of Cordoba posed a formidable threat, leading to conflicts and alliances with neighboring realms like Navarre. Despite initial victories, Ordoño II faced defeat at Valjejuencuera in 920, marking a period of instability and conflict for the Kingdom of Leon. For the next 8 decades, Leon experienced internal strife, Moorish attacks, and the partial independence of regions like Galicia and Castile. This turbulent period weakened Christian forces and delayed the Reconquista. However, there were moments of hope, such as during the reign of Ramiro II, when alliances with figures like Fernán González of Castile led to victories against the Caliphate's forces. By the end of the 11th century, under the rule of King Afonso VI of Leon, significant territorial gains were made. Afonso extended his realm to the Tagus River, forging alliances and collaborating with Frankish knights. And this expansion marked the completion of the original repopulation efforts, with a western nucleus now forming in what is known as modern-day Portugal. The period also saw the beginning of the Portuguese Reconquista, which lasted until the middle of the 13th century, culminating in the conquest of Faro by Afonso III of Portugal in 1249. Ferdinand I of Leon played a pivotal role in the mid-11th century, leading military campaigns to expand his realm and weaken the neighboring Taifa kingdoms. His conquest of Coimbra and his demands for parias from the Taifas significantly weakened their military and financial strength. Additionally, Ferdinand implemented repopulation efforts in the borders, granting numerous fueros to attract settlers and bolster defense. Upon Ferdinand's death in 1064, his kingdom was divided among his sons, leading to conflicts among them. Sancho II of Castile sought to reunite his father's kingdom and engaged in hostilities against his brothers, with the support of Rodrigo Diaz, later known as El Cid Campeador. Sancho's death in the siege of Zamora in 1072 further complicated the situation, with his brother Afonso VI eventually assuming control over Leon, Castile, and Galicia. Afonso VI, known as the Brave, continued his father's policies, empowering the fueros and overseeing the repopulation of key cities like Segovia, Salamanca, and Avila. He pursued a cautious approach to conquest, gradually integrating Toledo into his realm over several decades, marking a significant achievement as it was the former capital of the Visigoths. Afonso's diplomatic skills and willingness to negotiate with the Taifa rulers helped him achieve political goals before resorting to military force. His more assertive stance towards the Taifas caused concern among their rulers, prompting them to seek assistance from the Almoravids in North Africa. This alliance would have significant repercussions for the Iberian Peninsula, leading to increased conflict and the eventual emergence of the Almoravid dominance in the region. The Kingdom of Pamplona, situated along the Pyrenees and the Atlantic Ocean, emerged when local leader Inigo Arista led a revolt against Frankish authority and was proclaimed king in Pamplona around 1124. Now initially, the kingdom's power was closely tied to the Muwallad Banu Qasi of Tudela. But Pamplona's influence expanded significantly during the reign of Sancho the Great, 1004 to 1035. Under his leadership, the kingdom underwent substantial territorial growth, incorporating regions such as Castile, Leon, and parts of Aragon, and various small counties that eventually coalesced into the Principality of Catalonia. The expansion also resulted in Pamplona gaining overlordship over Gascony and the independence of Galicia. However, by the 12th century, the kingdom began to contract, returning to its core territories. In 1162, King Sancho VI declared himself as the King of Navarre, reflecting the kingdom's focus on its deep-seated Navarrese identity. While throughout its early history, the Kingdom of Pamplona engaged in frequent conflicts with the Carolingian Empire, but somehow managed to maintain its independence, which remained a defining characteristic of its history until 1513. And despite territorial fluctuations, Pamplona's strategic location, partnered with its political resilience, allowed it to endure as a distinct entity in the Iberian Peninsula for quite some time. Now, the Kingdom of Aragon originated as a division of the Kingdom of Navarre, when Sancho III of Navarre decided to partition his realm among his sons. Aragon became the portion of the kingdom passed to Ramiro I, an illegitimate son of Sancho III. Throughout history, the kingdoms of Aragon and Navarre were intermittently united under the same rule, until the death of Alfonso the Battler in 1135. In 1137, the heiress of Aragon married the Count of Barcelona, and their son Alfonso II ruled over the combined territories of his parents, establishing the composite monarchy known as the Crown of Aragon. Alfonso II successfully reabsorbed the Principality of Tarragona into the realm, ousting the Norman d'Aguilio family. Over the following centuries, the Crown of Aragon expanded its dominions across the Iberian Peninsula and the Mediterranean. James I of Aragon, also known as James the Conqueror, and for bloody good reason, notably annexed territories to the north, south, and the east, including the kingdoms of Valencia and Mallorca. James also negotiated the Treaty of Corbeil in 1258, whereby the French king relinquished any feudal claims over Catalonia. In an attempt to reunite the Aragonese and Navarrese crowns, James I sought a treaty with Sancho VII of Navarre, who, by the way, had no heirs. But the Navarrese nobles rejected James in favor of Theobald IV of Champagne, That's the region of Champagne in France, by the way. And fun fact, to my knowledge, if the champagne does not come from Champagne, it cannot be called champagne. Apparently, the French keep this this cultural export of theirs very, very close. From what I hear, there was a legal battle some years back, but that has nothing to do with the Reconquista. I do apologize. Now, the culmination of Aragon's significance came with the marriage of Ferdinand II of Aragon to Isabella of Castile, leading a dynastic union that laid the groundwork for modern Spain. This union, achieved through marriage, ultimately resulted in the conquest of Upper Navarre and the Emirate of Granada, consolidating Spanish territory under their rule. In 1139, after a resounding victory at the Battle of Orique against the Almoravids, Afonso Henriques was hailed as the first king of Portugal by his triumphant troops. And by the way, legend has it that during this battle, Jesus Christ announced himself, that's right, from the heavens, Afonso's heroic deeds, prophesying that the establishment of the first Portuguese Cortes at Lamego, where he would be crowned by the Primate Archbishop of Braga. Adding to the intrigue of this momentous occasion, in 1142, a contingent of Anglo-Norman crusaders en route to the Holy Land aided King Afonso Henriques in a daring but, unfortunately, unsuccessful siege of Lisbon. But don't worry, they'll get it back later. The Treaty of Zamora in 1143. Now that is a pivotal moment in the history of Portugal, as Alfonso VII of Leon and Castile formally acknowledged Portuguese independence from the Kingdom of Leon, basically creating its status as a sovereign nation. This recognition was further underscored by Pope Alexander III in 1179 through the papal bull titled Manifestus Probatum, affirming Afonso Henriques as the legitimate King of Portugal. The subsequent decades saw Portugal embroiled in fierce campaigns against the Moors, with the aid of crusaders and military monastic orders, such as the Knights Templar, the Order of Aviz, and of course the Order of St. James. These efforts gradually pushed the Moors southward to the Algarve on the southern coast of Portugal. By 1249, Portugal's participation in the Reconquista culminated in the definitive capture of the Algarve under the rule of Afonso III of Portugal. This marked the end of the Moorish rule in Portugal, and the beginning of a period of religious, cultural, and ethnic consolidation within the kingdom. Following the completion of their Reconquista, Portugal emerged as a predominantly Roman Catholic realm. However, brief conflicts with Castile did persist, notably under Denis of Portugal, who waged a, albeit short, war of possession of the towns of Serpa and Mora. Afterward, he pursued a policy of peace, culminating in the signing of the Treaty of Alcañices with Ferdinand IV of Castile in 1297, which established a permanent border between the two kingdoms. Amidst the suppression of the Knights Templar across Europe in the early 14th century, King Denis of Portugal re-established the Templars of Tomar as the Order of Christ in 1319. Dennis, recognizing the order's invaluable contributions to the Reconquista and the reconstruction of Portugal in general, ensured that their assets remained within the order rather than being appropriated by the crown. While the experience gained during the battles of the Reconquista proved instrumental in Portugal's subsequent expansion and exploration efforts, most notably the conquest of Ceuta, which laid the foundation for the Portuguese Empire. Additionally, contact with Muslim navigation techniques and sciences facilitated Portuguese nautical innovations, including the iconic caravel, which was a kind of ship they had that could bear the rough seas better, of course playing a pivotal role in Portugal's voyages of discovery during the Age of Exploration. I've recently done a few videos on characters like Vasco da Gama and a few others, Ferdinand Magellan. Quite interesting. You should go and watch them. Sometimes you do Age of Discovery videos and it's either going to be Spain or Portugal, maybe Francis Drake in Britain, but fascinating time. Well, alongside Portugal's rise, several minor Christian realms had emerged, including the Kingdom of Figuera, the Lordship of Albarracin, the Principality of Tarragona, the Principality of Valencia, each contributing to this very complex image of medieval Iberia. If you've ever seen a map of medieval times, especially around the time of the Holy Roman Empire, all of the smaller kingdoms, quite complicated. You'll never memorize them all. It's like trying to remember all of the different Pokemon. Well, in this chaos of the 9th century Iberia, as we rewind a little bit, the Berbers, emboldened by revolts, had returned to North Africa, sparking a wave of unrest. Sensing an opportunity for autonomy, many governors of distant cities from the Umayyad capital, Cordoba, plotted to establish their independence. In 929, the Emir of Cordoba, Abd al-Rahman III, seized the momentous opportunity, declaring himself caliph and breaking away from the Abbasids in Baghdad. With this bold move, Abd al-Rahman III consolidated all military, religious, and political power, initiating a sweeping reorganization of the army and bureaucracy. Under Rahman III's leadership, attempts to subjugate the remaining Christian kingdoms of the Iberian Peninsula intensified. His aggressive campaigns pushed back the Christians beyond the Cantabrian mountains, signaling the Umayyad dynasty's dominance in the region. However, it was Abd al-Rahman's grandson, a mere puppet in the hands of influential Vizier al-Mansur, who continued the expansionist agenda. Al-Mansur's ruthless campaigns ravaged cities such as Burgos, Leon, Pamplona, Barcelona, and Santiago de Compostela, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake until his death in 1002. The demise of Al-Mansur was the real turning point, plunging Al-Andalus into a period of instability and internal strife. Between 1002 and 1031, the region was torn apart, mainly by civil wars, culminating in the fragmentation of the Umayyad territory into Taifa kingdoms. These small kingdoms, or taifas as they are known, emerged as city governors and asserted their independence, resulting in the proliferation of up to 34 distinct realms, each centered around its capital. Lacking a cohesive vision for Moorish presence in Iberia, Taifa rulers frequently clashed with each other. All of this while the Christians began to retake what was once theirs. Well, of course, what was once theirs was also once somebody else's, but, hey, that is just the way it works. I don't make the rules. Well, all of this just continued to make the situation worse and worse. The taifas could never really get along. It wasn't a religious thing. It was just a political thing. The law of man, the law of its nature, is conflict. As long as you have neighbors, they'll always have something that you want to take away from them. Perhaps not so much in our modern times, where we've been somewhat subdued, but certainly back in those times where you didn't have a Instagram feed to swipe through all day to distract you. It was all about the conflict. Anyway, I digress. Amidst all of this chaos, the Christian kingdoms of the north continued their relentless advance. Alfonso VI of Leon and Castile's conquest of Toledo in 1085 symbolized the shifting tides of power in the region. Faced with mounting pressure from encroaching Christian forces, Taifa rulers turned to Yusuf ibn Tashfin, the Berber chieftain leading the Almoravids, in a desperate bid for support. However, the resurgence of the Taifa states and their cooperation proved to be short-lived. The collapse of the Almoravid dynasty in the 1140s did lead to a resurgence of the Taifas, yes, but it was followed by another period of fragmentation when the Almohad Caliph declined in the 1220s. The Almoravids, a militant Berber Muslim militia, emerged as a formidable force in medieval Iberia, marked by their uncompromising stance towards Christians and Jews. Unlike their predecessors, the Almoravids sought to unite the fragmented Taifa kingdoms into a single Almoravid caliphate, with their armies marking multiple incursions into the Iberian Peninsula between 1086 and 93. Notably, they dealt a significant blow to Christian forces at the Battle of Sarajas in 1086, halting the southward expansion of the Christian kingdoms. However, their ambitious plans were thwarted by the valiant efforts of El Cid, who led the successful defense of Valencia in 1094, dealing the Almoravids their first defeat. Meanwhile, Navarre experienced a period of decline in the prominence under the reign of King Sancho IV, who lost control of Rioja to Sancho II of Castile and faced the looming prospect of vassalage to Aragon. Upon Sancho IV's death, Navarrese turned to Sancho Ramirez, the King of Aragon, who ascended the throne as Sancho V of Navarre and the First of Aragon. Sancho Ramirez's reign was marked by territorial expansion and international recognition for Aragon, as he united the kingdom with Navarre and advanced its borders southward, notably capturing Huesca in 1096. In the region of Catalonia, internal strife and external pressures from neighboring taifas posed significant challenges. Barcelona, in particular, grappled with dynastic crisis, leading to open warfare among these smaller counties. However, by the 1080s, Barcelona managed to restore its dominion over the smaller counties, stabilizing the region's political landscape once again. Following a brief period of disintegration characterized by the emergence of the Almohads, a rising power in North Africa, being most of Al-Andalus fell under their control. However, their dominance was once again short-lived, as they suffered a decisive defeat at the Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa in 1212, leading to the gradual loss of their territories in the subsequent decades, little by little eroding away. By 1252, only the Emirate of Granada remained, albeit as a vassal state of Castile, marking the end of Muslim rule in most of Iberia. Well, the Reconquista culminated in the Granada War, waged by Ferdinand and Isabella, which concluded with the surrender of Granada in 1492. The Muslim population in Castile therefore witnessed a dramatic decline, with many perishing in conflict or enslavement, while others emigrated or remained under Christian rule, albeit with considerable hardship. Thus, the fall of Granada marked the final nail in the coffin for Islamic Iberia, and it paved the way for the Spanish expansion into North Africa, albeit facing formidable opposition from the burgeoning Ottoman Empire in the east. But, well, perhaps there'll be more videos about the Ottoman Empire a little later. But for now, I'd like to thank my top-tier patrons, that being Britt, Charles, JC, Jeffrey, and Stark Factory. If you would like to support the channel, take a look in the description. But if you're listening to this, you've already supported just enough. Thank you very much for listening this far. I do appreciate it. And I will see you, well, whenever you feel like coming back. But you know that I'm going to be right here. Good night, everyone.